Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Jeff Hoffman, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. In fact, I had a hard time sleeping last night. I'm so pumped up about this. So like we talked about before, everybody has a story and our passion is to help them tell it. So what we do is we start with where you were born with your permission and go all the way up to today. And then we talk about all the wonderful things you're doing. You're literally traveling the world, inspiring and motivating people. And you certainly did with me. By the time you were done talking at Awaken Church in San Marcos, I was ready to run through a wall.
Well, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that. And you know how much I enjoy that community there at Awaken. So I was born in Arizona, in the Arizona desert. Had a single mom who had 4 kids and 3 jobs. She was always working to make ends meet, which is, while I wish it had been easier on her, was certainly a good role model.
Oh, sure.
About getting stuff done instead of complaining, right? Because that was not her style. She just got it done.
Yeah.
Went to so we were basically poor, and my mom just recently passed away, and my sister pointed out something that I thought was really interesting. She said, how come we didn't know we were poor? And I think that's a huge tribute to a single mom.
It is.
To not focus on the wrong things. Mike had a big educational goal, and you'll get a kick out of this because there was this new thing coming out that I wanted to be part of. It was called AI.
Yeah.
And now it's a million years later. That's how old I am. And AI is finally here. So I specifically wanted to get an education, but I wanted to study AI. Yeah. And there were only a small number of universities that had it back then. Yeah. And one of them back east was Yale University. Mm-hmm. And literally, when I spoke to my guidance counselor at my big high school, where football is way more important than math, and I said, I want to go to Yale, they laughed at me. My guidance counselor said, people like us don't go to places like that. So super motivational, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So I went, I got in, I did what I had to do. But Mike, the problem was, even with scholarships and aid, my mom couldn't contribute really any money. Yeah. So when I got there, I got booted because I couldn't pay the bill. I hadn't paid it all.
They kicked you out?
Yep, they said you can't go to class because you don't have a zero balance. Oh. And I said, we don't have any more money. We gave you everything we have. And they said, well, you can't go to school here. Now, in their defense, you can't go to Longhorn Steakhouse, eat steak and potato, and then say, oh, you know what? I don't actually have any money. Yeah. It's fair is fair.
Yeah, but it's a for-profit business. I got you.
Yeah. But I didn't even have the money to go home, right? Oh, wow. I told them I can't even get home at this point. So I started my first company really in the basement under the university, in these like tunnels under Yale. I started my first company, which was a software company, and I funded my whole education that way. Graduated in 4 years.
Well, I love this story. I just have to ask.
Yeah.
So you start a software company, you literally are in your first semester at Yale, right?
Yes.
What made you, what software did you come up with?
Well, here's the problem.
What made you do this?
Mike, here's the problem. I haven't been to class, so I don't know how to write software.
Right. That's why, right?
I know that's where the money is. So what I did was, I didn't have a car either. I walked around in the hot sun and I hung up little signs saying programmers wanted at local schools.
Right.
And people called me, and other college students were not so much looking for the money as the experience on their resume, saying they've actually written some software.
There you go.
Or they wanted, pizza and beer money.
Right. But they wanted some
so-
work experience, right? For their resume.
Correct.
That's an idea. Yeah.
So I went to small businesses in the community to find out what software needs they had.
Okay.
And I had some ideas. Today it would be called business intelligence.
Okay.
Back then I just said, don't you think you could learn more about your business and run it better if you could see the data right now? Because I'll figure out how to get it for you. That was kind of it. And a lot of them said, well, if you could do that, today it's called a dashboard. That term didn't exist.
Yeah.
But now I realize what I was telling them is I think I could create a dashboard custom for your business. People said yes. So I went to these programmers and said, here's what they want. They built it. I took it back, got paid, and bought the programmers a pizza.
So this was your idea, or this was a company?
No,
you talked to somebody who owned a company and they said, hey, I really need this data. Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, I thought you were going to say a software company. Yes, in between. I went to them and said, you need any custom software? And most of them said, for what? So I was trying to think of something I could write software for.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I came up with the idea. I said, well, what about if I could pull the data out so you could assess your business in real time, not at the end of the quarter?
Gotcha.
I didn't know how to do that. It just made sense to me. And people said yes. So that business, we sold software to small businesses all around the Northeast.
I love this.
And I had a small army of programmers that I outsourced all this to, and that's how I paid for college. I got a software.
Figured out a way.
Well, that's what it's all about, right? It's all about the relationship between wanting something and working for it. How do I get from A to B?
Right.
Instead of sitting on the couch wishing while doing nothing, or instead of complaining while doing nothing,
right.
Figure out. I had written something down, Mike, when I was pretty young, and I wrote down this sort of what I thought was this 3-step formula. I wrote down dream big, work hard, and create value.
Yeah.
And here was my thought. If you got to have a big dream, because if you achieve 100% of a small dream, you haven't done much.
Right. I agree.
But if you achieve, half of a big dream, you're way further ahead. Yeah. So you got to have big dreams. Yale was my first big dream. And then second, you have to work as hard as your dream is big.
Yeah.
I literally had this conversation awkwardly with somebody last night about those are all I had to keep saying, that's great. Those are all ideas. Every time I talk to you, just talking.
Yeah.
About your ideas. You haven't actually built anything.
Right.
You haven't done the hard work. And then the third part is create value. Working hard doesn't really matter if you're excuse me, if you're not doing something that somebody will pay you for.
Right.
So
I agree with that. Yeah.
That was it. Dream big, work hard, create value. And I kind of thought that was the formula. And so I had done that my whole childhood, cleaning people's garages or mowing a lawn or anything to avoid putting more pressure on my mom by asking her for money. So in college, it was the same thing. What value can I create that someone would pay me for if I'm willing to do the work, right? So I can achieve this dream. Because I'll tell you what, Mike, everybody back home in Arizona said, when I told them what happened at college, they all said, well, just come home.
Yeah.
Why don't you just come to the local community college? They didn't dream big. I was like, because that's not my dream. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, but it's so much easier. And so anyway, you are correct. There was a formula there.
Well, I think there's a big lesson here. In fact, I know there is. Okay. You're a walking, talking big lesson, but here's the thing. Okay. When you're up against it, and there's a running theme here. I've done your episode 191 of our podcast, and every self-made person I've talked to figured out a way. They'd go and work for free. They would figure out a way to get their foot in the door. They'd figure out a way. They stood in front of a business and handed out 300 recipes, whatever, right? They figured out a way in. And once they got in, they made the most of whatever that was. For you, it just was, I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm going to figure out a way to make this work, and we're going to go forward. So you go forward, you create this business, you make enough money to go to Yale and to graduate. Here's the thing. You value that degree from Yale more than just about anybody on the planet, because of how hard you had to work to get there and the fact that you weren't willing to take no for an answer.
You are 100% right. And I'm glad that for everybody listening, I'm glad that you pulled out that theme because, it's much about just find a way.
Yeah.
It's much more visible in sports, right? Because what they say at the end when somebody that's supposed to be a star lost again,
Yeah.
right? Failed in the playoffs. The phrase is, look, man, winners just find a way. They just
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah.
It's the visual version is Tom Brady's down 28-3 in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And people like, it's over. And
Yeah.
everybody but him, he said, no, there's a way and I'm going to find it. There's still a way to win this game. Winners find a way.
Well,
So
how
you're
many
right.
people tuned out either mentally or physically from that game?
Absolutely.
You with me? And a
Yep.
bunch of us were sitting there going, this is not the way Tom Brady operates. Okay. So I had a professional football player, former professional football player on my podcast, and he's now been on twice. The first time that he was on, I was talking to him after we stopped recording. So after we were done with the session, with the episode. And he said, Mike, you're not like anybody. And I said, why do you say that? And he said, well, you don't treat me like I'm a former football player. You treat me like I'm a person. But here's the thing, Jeff. If you look at his life, this is why I love life stories. Okay. If you look at his life story, he grew up in the murder capital of the world. There's more murders per capita where he lived, where he grew up, than anywhere on the planet. He raised himself, got himself up, found a way, figured out a way, didn't have a dad, all this kind of stuff, but he had uncles, he had cousins, he had people, he had coaches, right? This guy at the ripe old age of 18 could have gone anywhere, and he chose Maryland. He chose Maryland so that all the people that helped raise him could go to his games.
Wow.
Okay. Talk about a leader. Okay. So the last time I had him on, he was talking to me about his network that he just came out with. It's called Lights Out Sports Network. And
are you talking about Sean?
Yeah, Sean. Yeah.
Sean's a very good friend of mine.
Right. So Sean goes, you're not like anybody. I said, Sean, I love the fact that you're a former football player. Okay. And I was a huge fan of yours when you were with the Chargers. Here's the thing. It's the work that you put in and the not willing to quit that impresses me.
Yep.
It's not the football thing. You with me? Because I think the best stories in the NFL are the people like Austin Eckler, okay, who came from nowhere, undrafted free agent, the whole thing, right? And raised himself up to be number one in touchdowns scored in the NFL.
Yep.
That's literally what you did. That's what you did at Yale. You just did it in a different genre, right? You did it with software and you figured out a way to get through it. You just weren't willing to take no for an answer is what I'm getting at. And
you're absolutely correct. And
that's what impresses me about pro athletes and people who have achieved great things is they're just not willing to take no. They're just not willing to just come home. It'll be easier. Come home and go to community college.
Right.
You with me? That's not acceptable to them, just like it wasn't acceptable to you. That's that same mentality, Jeff. And it's the thing that I love the most. It's what attracts me to you so much. I'm a huge fan, and I know you can't tell because I hide it well, but I'm a huge fan of yours. So you graduate from Yale, then where do you go?
Yeah, well, so then I did something that I wish I hadn't, which was I folded. Right, all the pressure from everybody is go get a good job at a good company, get a good salary. Now I got a software degree.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of good jobs at good companies and good salaries. The thing no one mentions to you is that you should go get a good life.
Yeah.
So I got a good job at a big engineering company. Good job, good company, good salary. I did not have a good life. I actually hated my job.
Yeah.
I sat in that cubicle, would stare out the window and think, this is it, man. I'm just going to rot away year after year in this cubicle doing this software.
This is what I work so hard for.
Yeah. So again, the reason I said I folded because that's societal pressure. Get a good job, get a good salary. All these things, none of them made me happy. I only did that a couple years, Mike, and I quit.
Yeah.
I could not do for me, we're not talking about right or wrong for anybody listening. It's a DNA thing.
Yeah.
For me, I could not do the corporate thing. And so I just jumped. I just quit, broke, unemployed, no benefits, no plan at this point. But the only thing I knew is I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I have to share a really quick story of kind of what ended it. Boss comes over one day. There's a sea of cubicles of software engineers, just as far, this is a huge company. As far as you can see are just a cubicle farm. And the boss comes walking, and we never even see this guy. He's so many levels above us. We've never seen him in person. And he walks into our building, and he goes over by the window, and he's standing at the end of this cubicle farm, and he goes, "Hoffman." And everyone's like, "Oh my God, he's calling you." So I walk out there, and everyone's like peeking over the cubicles to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And the boss is like, "Hey, but," he goes, "Jeff," he goes, "there's one management slot open now. Somebody got promoted up." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Do you want that opportunity?" I said, "Honestly, sir, everyone in the building is hoping they get that promotion."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, let me tell you how I'm going to pick the person that deserves that promotion." I said, "Okay." And he points outside, and it's just a massive parking lot. And he goes, "You know what I see out there?" I was like, "Cars." And he's like, "Yes." And I'm pretty proud of myself. I'm 1 for 1 on the management quiz.
Right.
Right? And he goes, "Every day, at the end of the day, I come and I look out this window." And he said, "I'm trying to decide who to promote at this company. So I look to see whose car is here last."
Yeah.
And I said, "Wait a minute, it's Brian, and his car is here last is because he's a complete moron and
Right.
he can't do his work."
Right.
And he didn't even respond. He said, "That's the person that's most dedicated to this company." I said, "No, he's an idiot and he can't figure out how to do his work. He's
Right.
stuck."
It takes him longer to do everything that
Right.
everybody else already got done.
And he just completely ignored me. And he said, "So that's how I decide who deserves this management job, by looking to see his car here is here the longest." And he said, "So did you learn something here today?" I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, he's all proud of me. He says, "What did you learn?" And I said, "I'm just going to buy 2 cars and leave one here." Well, the problem was
Oh my
all the people behind me were listening in, and they
Oh, I
all burst
love
out
this
laughing.
story.
Everybody behind me burst out laughing, and it pissed him off
Oh, I love this story.
because they
But
were all
what
behind
he
their
was telling
cubicles. They all
you,
started laughing, and he goes, "Do you think that's funny?" I said, "To be fair, sir, that was funny." He
yeah.
just stormed off. Never
Oh
saw
my
him
God.
again. I gave my 2 weeks notice. I was like, "That's the boss. I'm screwed.
Yeah.
I'm out of here."
Well,
So that's when I quit.
yeah.
I
So
just couldn't do it.
the moral of the story is the person who has the least life, right, is the one
Yeah,
that's going to
right.
get promoted.
Made no sense to me, and I wanted no part of it. So
Yeah.
my first real startup, now I'm broke and unemployed and 20 something. And that's when I spent the little money I had to go to the airport.
Yeah.
I bought an airline ticket to see a mentor, but back then is when you had to wait forever you had to wait for a human to check you in and give you a boarding pass.
Yeah.
And the line was almost an hour and a half, and I missed the flight, and I was very frustrated. And I was like, I remember arguing with the lady. "Why do we all stand in line so you can hit print and print boarding passes?" She's like, "You
Right.
need a boarding pass to go through." I said, "Right, but it's one printer and you're standing there looking at our ID and printing our boarding pass." She's like,
Right.
"That's how it works." And I was saying, "Why can't I just check myself in?" And she said, "It doesn't work that way. Next."
Yeah.
So I went home, and really that Friday was my first kind of legit startup. Which was the key when you go to the airport now, as you know, the kiosks that you
Yeah.
check yourself in. That was the first product. So
Wow.
the point is that the company was all the focus was on solving a problem. What I
Mhm.
get today, Mike, is people call me and they say, "Hey, good news, I'm an entrepreneur." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" And
Mhm.
they say, "Well, I got an office, and now I got a website, and right, and I got a business card." I was like, "You have everything but an idea,
Right.
right? You don't just be an entrepreneur. You saw entrepreneurship's just the mindset of solving the problem." So
That's
tell you
it.
what I now know in hindsight, here's how it should look. And what I'm saying to anybody listening is you should find a problem that you are obsessed with solving. If you are not feeling that way, then keep looking.
Yeah.
Find a real problem in the world and go fix it. All my favorite entrepreneurs were solving a problem they actually had.
Yeah.
And so for me, I just remember one time I'm trying to design this kiosk, and one of my buddies stops by and asks me what I'm doing. And a couple weeks later, he comes back and he said, "Hey, I have a friend who I told about what you're doing, and he would like to invest." I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "He wants to give you some money so you can order the hardware manufacturing." I
Mhm.
said, "Oh, I'm going to need that soon."
Yeah.
And I said, "Take the investment, take the check." And he said, "I'd love to, but I can't. There's a problem." And I said, "What?" And he said, "You don't have a bank account." And I said, "Whatever. I'm really busy designing these kiosks." I said, "Can you just go get me a bank account?" And he said, "I'd love to, but there's another problem." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "You don't even have a company."
Yeah.
I said, "Dude, I just want to build these kiosks."
Right.
He said, "Jeff, right, but you need to set up a company, set up a bank account, talk to an investor." I said, "You go do all that. I'll keep making the product." A company is the thing you wrap around a product because you have to.
Right.
If I didn't need a company, I never would have built it.
Right.
The product, the problem you're solving should be the sole focus. And I see too much of the opposite, Mike. People have a company. When I go to see what they're doing, they haven't really figured out anything really exciting to do yet, but they got a
Right.
company.
Right.
Find a problem, become obsessed with the problem, and build a company around the solution to that problem. And
Exactly.
that's what the
Yeah.
kiosk company was.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So you see it, you see something that needs to happen. You go to work designing it, and at some point you have to be thinking, I got to go sell this, right?
Absolutely.
So did you talk to an airline ahead of time? Did you how did you
So
go
here's
ahead?
a huge lesson for little startups that are dealing with big companies.
Yeah.
Um, in your brain, you think that common sense, logic should apply, but it
Right.
doesn't.
Right.
Because here's what I think at big companies. A lot of times, those executives, it's not the part we forget is it's not their money,
Mhm.
it's the company's money. What they care about is whatever they get graded on.
Right.
And you're thinking, you're this airline,
Mhm.
and I'm offering to save you money. Why would you say no? But what you're forgetting is you're talking to the senior VP of revenue.
Right.
It's not his money. He's not being judged by that. He cares about his life, his paycheck, and his promotion. And so if you're not focused on what does that person actually care about, so I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
I went to airlines and said, check this out. And they're like, not that they didn't, the kiosk idea wasn't interesting at the beginning. It was, they're like, you're some little startup, some little
Mhm.
guy with a handful of people making these, way too risky for us. Go away.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, but it will save you a ton of money. And they're like, go away.
Yeah.
And so what I had to do was put together what I thought was they would think through the cost benefit analysis. They didn't. I had
No.
to write it up.
Yeah, you got to
But
bring it to them.
yes,
You got to put it out in front of them, right? And say, look,
absolutely.
here's how you cover your backside.
Yep. They're
If
they're
you
not going to
approve
do
this,
that.
yeah, if you approve this, here's your fallback.
Yep. Don't expect them even.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.